No. Were there any questions from the members of the panel?
No, not for me. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I just had something funny flash up on my screen. We'll move to, is it Jamie Mitchell?
It is indeed. Thank you very much.
And you're from number 33, Isabella.
I am indeed. Our house is also right next to the play area at the rear of the property. And I'm also speaking today for two other neighbours who border the childcare. They weren't able to register as speakers as well.
Right.
So they've asked me to speak on their behalf. We all object to the application to have leaf blowing from 7 to 7:45 a.m. as it would be very intrusive and a negative impact both on the direct neighbours as well as other neighbours. And I think you can see from, I think, the 15 or so submissions that it's a worry to even neighbours not directly adjacent to the childcare. On a personal level, I've got two young daughters, and actually I'm lucky that they are one of the few who sleep in. And you know, the idea of them being woken at 7 a.m. by leaf blowing as their bedrooms are right next door to the childcare and elevated as well, we're a floor up. So none of the proposed methods of building new fences would have any effect on the noise raising to the first floor. I think as it's a commercial operation operating in a residential area, I really think that any machinery should only be used inside the hours of operation. And so I would agree with Jeff's potential solution that there should be an addition or an amendment. I think if you, I'm not sure whether you've reviewed the noise report or the acoustic report, which was prepared by the daycare as part of this submission. But one of the key findings of that was the noise was calculated in the back area well above the acceptable criteria. The noise is likely to be considered intrusive and offensive with elevated windows, such as myself, directly overlooking the outdoor play area. It is unlikely that any suitable mitigation options exist that can achieve the required noise reductions. For this reason is the position of Koskias Acoustics. The use of the leaf blower during the morning hours as requested is not feasible without causing a noise disturbance. Okay. I think that, coupled with the Land Environment Court's previous ruling that no noise, no children outside before 8:30, means that we think that an amendment should be made to this DA, and we would like that there's a condition applied to the DA that says no machinery be operated outdoors by the childcare centre outside of its operating hours, 8:30 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Mitchell from the panel?
No.
All right, we'll move on. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, to Sarah McCarthy. Is she present?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, hello. You're from number 31, Isabella.
Yes, that's right. My heritage sandstone cottage is 2 doors from the childcare centre, so I'm right next door to Jamie. I strongly object to the use of a leaf blower from 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m. Mondays to Fridays in this really quiet residential neighbourhood, as do Jamie and Jeff and the other 10 objectors, which include an objection from the Queen's Park Precinct Committee. The fact that there were more than 10 objections received highlights how contentious this DA is, and it is not in the public interests of the local residents. I have lived at 31 Isabella Street for more than 30 years, and one of the greatest joys of living here is this quiet, low-density residential area and waking up to the gentle sounds of the birds chirping in the mornings. I hear the birds chirping in the mornings every morning. This is a direct connection to nature. If this DA is approved, the pleasure of waking up in the morning to birds chirping will be immediately destroyed. Instead, I will be rudely woken up by intrusive and offensive noise pollution. The applicant's own acoustic report says the noise is likely to be considered intrusive and offensive and will generate noise levels significantly above the project noise criteria. The report does not endorse leaf blowing between 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m. And the report concludes that the use of a leaf blower during these hours will not comply with the adopted noise criteria. As this is a residential area, we shouldn't have to endure intrusive and offensive noise pollution every weekday for the rest of our lives. In a residential area, you might expect a neighbour to make noise every now and then, which is acceptable, not every weekday forever, which is totally unreasonable and unacceptable. I hope that when the WLPP did the site inspection, it was between the hours of 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m. when the leaf blowing is proposed, so that you could experience firsthand how quiet the neighbourhood is at this time of morning. It's important that Isabella and Cuthbert Streets were included because the outdoor area adjoins Isabella Street. So any leaf blowing during the early morning will adversely impact Isabella and Cuthbert Street residents more than Burke Street residents. Burke Street is a much noisier road because it's a thoroughfare and is on the bus route, whereas Isabella Street is a narrow one-way back lane and Cuthbert Street is like a quiet cul-de-sac. The noise pollution generated by the use of a leaf blower during these hours will adversely impact my quality of life and the acoustic privacy and amenity that I have enjoyed for more than 30 years. It will adversely impact not just myself, but all of the local residents, which includes a mixture of pensioners, retirees like myself, families, people working from home. We will all be affected by the invasive noise pollution, which is why this DA is so contentious.
Well, can I tell you that you're out of time now? So could I ask you to finish up, please?
Yeah, okay. In the applicant's statement of environmental effects, they say that is considered to be in the public interest as the modifications will not have any adverse impacts on the surrounding locality of adjoining land uses. This is clearly untrue. So if the leaf blower is approved during the early hours of 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m., this would seriously be detrimental on the surrounding locality, the acoustic amenity and privacy for all of the local residents of our exceptionally quiet neighbourhood, which is reinforced by the applicant's own acoustic report. For all of these reasons, I support Jeff and Jamie's objections, and we ask that the WLPP refuse the leaf blowing aspect of this development application during the early hours of 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m. in order to maintain our acoustic amenity and privacy.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members of the panel to Ms. McCarthy?
No.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Sama Mansour. Is he present?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Hello, you're the applicant, aren't you, Mr. Mansour?
Correct. Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for allowing me the time. Before I go ahead with the two DAs or the two parts of the DA that I'm going to be addressing, I just wanted to bring attention to the panel that I've met with Jamie Mitchell and some of the neighbours, and they supported the DA before, and I've got the letter, and I can read it to you and I can forward it to you. It says, "Dear Sir, Madam, the undersigned neighbours of Gingerbread Kindergarten supports the application that leaf blowing to be allowed between 7 a.m. and 7:45 a.m. Monday to Friday, based on the understanding that the childcare hours of operation remains restricted to 7:45 and 5:45. Any extension of daycare operating hours would not be supported." So I'm surprised that Sarah McCartney and Jamie Mitchell.
You just have to put up with it. That's live.
Yeah, because I've got it in writing from them.
Okay.
I've got their support.
We spoke about this last week, Sam, so I feel like you're misrepresenting this here.
And I'm not having a debate over this.
Yeah, what I wanted to say first about the operating hours, we live in an environment where both families are working, both parents are working, completely different environment than 20 years ago when the operating hours was 8:30 to 5:30. So at the moment, I'm requesting the hours to be extended from 8:30 to 5:30 to 7:45, 5:45, which have been the hours for the last 5 years or 4 years at least. And that didn't have any negative impact to the neighbors. The other thing is, why the 7:45? Most parents do work from 8:30. So if they have to drop their children by 8:30, they're going to be late for work. And this was supported by a petition signed by the parents. 69 parents signed that the hours of 8:30 to 5:30 would negatively impact them. Also, interestingly, not only the 69 parents that will be negative impacted, but also their colleagues. 79 of their colleagues have signed that this will have a negative impact on their whole workplace. The New South Wales Planning and Environment Childcare Planning Guidelines 2017 in page 18 states to minimize the impact of the childcare facility on the amenity of neighboring residential developments, hours of operation should not be outside 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So obviously 7:45 is between that. Even in Waverley Council, there are at least 12 childcares in residential areas operating either from 7 a.m. or closing at 6 p.m., operating 10 hours a day, including 4 Waverley Council run centres. So what I'm asking, 7:45 to 5:45, is within 12 childcare centres in Waverley Council. Regarding the leaf blowing that I'm seeing a lot of the neighbours objecting, the problem that we have is we have many mature trees. We have about 5 mature trees in our outside play area. Some of them, obviously, they all shed leaves, and some shed gum nuts or drop gum nuts. Gum nuts are dangerous for children. So if a child was to choke on gum nut, this is a big problem. So I'm having a problem from the council that wants me to retain the trees, and the Department of Education that wants me to make sure that the outdoor play area is safe for children. So that's why I do leaf blowing. And I don't do it 5 days a week. It's only done twice a week. It's never been done 5 days a week for the history of the childcare, which has been 50 years. The acoustic report did show that the report highlighted to sleep disturbance as per the regulation, and it also highlighted that any sleep disturbance is any activity before 7 a.m. The acoustic report also highlighted that the leaf blowing presents about between 50 to 66 dBs, the decimal points for the noise, while the allowed criteria is 48. So it's not that much higher than the 48. And the Protection of the Environment Operations Regulation of 2017 says that the grass machines should not exceed 105 dBs. So my leaf blower is between 50 and 66, while the regulation is 105. So I'm way below the regulation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mansour. Any questions of this gentleman from the panel?
No.
Just one question. Just in terms of the works that you're proposing, we've got a set of plans and it's a bit unclear. So as I understand, the only building works are the fence. Is that?
Correct. And that was a recommendation from the acoustic report to minimize the noise for Mr. Stevenson.
Okay, so things that are shown on the plans, like relocating the chicken coop and the sign.
No, nothing. That's all planned.
So is there one plan that actually shows the fence and the?
Yes. Sorry. I believe in the acoustic report, it has the fence that's to be changed.
Okay, but is it, as you understand it, a fence between number 37 and the player and number?
Correct. It's between number 37 and the back of Isabella Street, where the chicken coop is.
Okay. And
So that-
is it between number 30 and number 37 as well? Or like, does it go around?
Yes, it goes like a Z shape. So Isabella Street, all over the back of
Yeah.
Isabella, then down to Mr. Stevenson, number 37, and then down to number 32, Burke Street.
And is that just, it's a Lapton cap fence to 2.1 or something? Or
It's a 1.8 meter. I think it's an acoustic fence. Just one sec, I'll be able to get it in the acoustic report, but the acoustic report has a recommendation of what the fence material should be.
okay, but it's not 1.8. Is it 1.8 along Isabella Street as well? Or?
I believe that's the recommendation on the report. Yeah,
Okay.
and obviously I'm happy to comply with whatever the panel wants the fence to be. I'm indifferent on the fence.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of Mr. Mansour?
I just had a question. Everybody seems to be very upset about the leaf blowing, and I can't say I blame them. Is the only option to have it so early in the have it done so early in the morning? Is there an option to have it done at the end of the day rather than the beginning of the day?
I did over Christmas. I did have, because the cleaner wasn't around, so we had another cleaner that came and did it at 10 a.m. And Mr. Stevenson called the police and the Department of Education saying that it's not safe to have a leaf blowing when children are around.
Well, that's completely false.
Well, look, I'm not going to have any backwards and forwards debate, Mr. Stevenson. So thank you.
So the police attended the centre and did their own investigation and found that the children's safety was not compromised. And that's why we decided to do it before the centre opens.
Okay.
Paul, can I just, it seems to me that the comments from the local residents seem to think that this application is dealing with the use of a leaf blower. If I could just read condition 22, which says consent to use the leaf blower is not required under the development application, and therefore this does not require council consent. The use of a leaf blower must comply with the Protection of the Environment Operations Regulation 2017. So what, as I understand, the council is saying is that while the issue of the leaf blower was raised in the application, it is not something that is dealt with as part of the application, but the council relies on the provisions of the Protection of the Environment Operations Regulation to control the use of a noise blower. Leaf blower, I'm sorry.
Correct. And that's the Protection of the Environment Operation, and it's saying that any grassing should not exceed 105 dB.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking about times now because the regulations also talk about appropriate times to use a leaf blower. Now, the council's not regulating the use of the leaf blower. It's being regulated somewhere else. So it didn't appear that those residents who spoke appeared to understand that. Now, I may be wrong, but that was certainly my impression.
As residents, are we able to make a comment on that?
Well, no, look, I don't want to go backwards and forwards. I'm not going to have a hearing that goes backwards and forwards from one person to the other. Thank you very much.
So nothing more. Thank you, Paul.
Mr. Mansour.
Just on a condition.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So that concludes the speakers in this matter. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we will adjourn and consider this application and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. Move on then to the next item, which is 30 Delview Street, Tamarama. And the first speaker I have is Peter Chapman. Is he present, please? Peter Chapman from number 26 Delview.
I am, yes. Here I am.
Hello. Your name is Peter Chapman from 26 Delview Street, Tamarama.
That's correct.
Please go ahead with your submission.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, we live at 28, in fact, in townhouse number 1, myself and my wife. We're owner-occupiers, and we're the 2 retirees, and we spend a lot of time at home enjoying the fantastic position and views. We're extremely concerned about these very large tree varieties that are the subject of this DA amendment. They do grow well in this area. We have seen them grow very well, and they are potentially very big. In fact, there's 2 existing Integria grandifolias, Banksia integrifolias within 50 metres of this subject plantings that are at 12 metres high and appear to be still growing. We fully support the recommendation of the planning report of refuse for all of the reasons clearly made in the report. These trees would impact us severely, as they would all of the 14 people that made submissions, and there are implications, severe implications also for the public. We see only one solution here, in that these 20-odd, very large variety unapproved trees be replaced by appropriate plantings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Any questions from the members of the panel for Mr. Chapman?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Now, the next speaker is Will Corkill.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And
yes,
you're from number 17 Carlisle Street, Tamarama?
No, that's I'm actually from 26 Delview Street, Tamarama.
Oh, right. Well, I'm sorry that I had you down for the wrong address. Yes,
No
I have
problem.
that. You're from 26.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
So I'll try to be as brief as possible as well. I'd like to absolutely endorse and commend a very detailed report by the council. In fact, about 22 pages that thoroughly and very sensibly covers all the issues raised regarding this matter. There were 14 submissions from local residents that contributed to the review of this matter, and the recommendation of refusal by the planner is entirely correct and extremely thorough. There are 3 key points that were made, in my view, in the thorough report. Is 1, the impact on neighbours. To repeat, there were 14 submissions, and I'm speaking on all of their behalf. Secondly, the impact of these plantings on the broader community, which would include, for example, people walking and driving down Delview Street, and the views to the sea for all the benefits, of including visitors to the community. And thirdly, which is very important, the repeated non-compliance by the applicant with their various conditions of consent going back 7 years now, so back to 2015, and those matters are dealt with very clearly in the very detailed report by the planner. So fully endorse the recommendation for refusal, and thank you for the panel's time.
Thank you, Mr. Corkill. Are there any questions from this gentleman?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Corkill. Well, as with the other matters in today's agenda, at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. We move then to 5 Pacific Avenue, Tamarama. And is there a Mr. or Mrs. Kim Kench present? Kim Kench, K-E-N-C-H, from 5 Silver Street, from 8 Silver Street. Is that person not present?
She was a minute ago. I just saw her. I don't know.
I'll come back to her if I get the opportunity. Thank you. Is Mark Shapiro present?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Now, you're the architect for the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah. Please go.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Excuse me, Paul. I think there are a couple of other objectors on over the page.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're quite right. I'll come back to you, Mr. Shapiro.
No problem.
Madeline Theodore.
Hi, sorry. I'm here. I was just literally gone to get a drink of water. I'm so sorry.
So are you?
I'm Kim Kent.
Okay, good. And you're from?
I live at 8 Silver Street,
Yeah, please go.
Tamarama. Would you like me to start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Great. My husband and I have owned and lived in 8 Silver Street, Tamarama for the last 19 years. Before that, we lived at 3 Pacific Avenue, Tamarama, next door to the applicant. We have a great knowledge of the impact of weather events, having lived as direct neighbours for the past 25 years. It is obvious that the applicant is a complete overdevelopment of the site. It breaks all planning controls, including height restrictions, FSR and bulk. However, our primary concern is the excavation of 2,388 square cubic metres out of the existing piece of land, at the most extreme, digging down 13 metres. The developer is not trying to achieve additional housing for Sydney, but trying to maximise their profit. The current units have internal living space of 94 square metres, plus terraces of 15 square metres. In the new development, the proposed living spaces are 2 units of approximately 130 squares with 45 metres of external terrace, 2 just over 195 square metres, and 1 with 150 square metres, which includes a 110 square metre external terrace and rooftop living space. And the new proposal also has additional car spaces than current. It's a massive increase in 43% of internal living space, and the external living spaces increased nearly 3.5 times, and that doesn't even include the pool terrace and the pool. I have grave concerns that the build estimate is critically low, particularly given the sheer volume of excavation into the sandstone. The build is estimated at $4 million. Either the developer has no expertise in this area, or I fear is willing to cut costs and do a cheap job, or has deliberately underestimated. In the last 18 months, the economic and climate landscape has changed. We now have regular more than 1 in 100-year events and rainfall happening on a regular basis. Plus, many construction companies and builders have gone bankrupt in the last 6 months. The last development of this magnitude of excavating in the Tamarama area is the land at 21 Thompson Street, Tamarama. This was excavated at a similar scale 11 years ago before the developers or owners went broke. As a result, the site is an environmental blight to the community and I'm sure has ongoing costs to the council. The Tamarama community do not wish this to happen again. And there has never deliberately been given approval for a rooftop terrace across the Tamarama Gully, including the Tamarama Surf Club. This is due to the loss of amenity as any noise travels so far across the Tamarama Gully. And I believe Waverley Council should keep this precedent in place. And if you did a survey of all Tamarama residents, there would be an overwhelming response to agree. The other thing councillors might be aware of, there is a natural stream flowing down between Carlisle Street, Delview Street and Silver Streets. This already impacts flooding in our garage up to our knees from rain runoff as soon as we have any heavy rain. The current flats at 3 Pacific Avenue, where we used to live, are constantly flooding and have a history of water damage. And the public staircase from Silver Street to Pacific Avenue recently developed a sinkhole underneath due to recent rain events. So this is all on this same hill. My property at 8 Silver Street and next door at 10 Silver Street have side boundaries where that site is going to be excavated at its deepest level. I worry what is the recourse if the excavation leads to a landslide or even a small land movement. It would have a devastating effects on our property. Who would pay in that instance? Is it the developer who could declare bankruptcy or council? I don't even know if I can insure my house for such an event. The residents of Tamarama rely on Waverley Council to protect the neighbourhood and to not allow overdevelopment or environmental damage. The applicant is at the bottom of the hill and will enjoy magnificent views. It is imperative development controls are strictly met and not exceeded in order to not only stop this development from being overdevelopment, but to stop precedent, which could change the whole amenity to the whole existing community and gully.
Can I ask you to finish up your overtime?
That's it. Thank you.
Well time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel from Ms. Kench?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So then there was Madeline Theodore.
Yes, it's Madeline Park. Theodore's my maiden name, but
Madeline Park, right?
yeah, that's correct.
Yes, and you're from number 7 Pacific Avenue.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, please go ahead.
May I just ask permission for an extra minute and a half? I approximate.
No, look, you've got 3 minutes and I'm not going to let you have any longer. So off you go. Make the best of it.
Okay, firstly, my concern, whilst there may be a visual improvement to this proposed development, it is a knockdown and a rebuild. That's considered a new development, not a renovation. As such, there are a large number of planning controls not being met. The justification for this is based on a flawed rationale that the starting point for this development is the existing envelope of the building rather than the desired future character. I came to council in 2018 and participated in panel to object to the overdevelopment of 6 Pacific Avenue. By allowing a development that is grossly inconsistent with the controls set by the council, including height and FSR, I am concerned that this does set a precedent for the area and will be a green light to exceed development standards. Specifically, I am concerned that 6 Pacific Avenue will take advantage of 5 Pacific Avenue's development going through. When I looked to raise this in the submission, there's been one sentence to detail a justification of this, and on the basis that each DA is measured on its own merits. I don't believe that this is enough information to alleviate my concerns. The proposed DA purports that it is compatible with the bulk, scale and streetscape of the locality. However, I feel this is disingenuous. The general streetscape comprises 2 to 3 story dwellings, and in the case of the few apartment blocks, they are 3 to 4 stories high. The proposed DA is a 5-story development with add-ons such as rooftop terrace and an excavated garage. There is nothing comparable or consistent with this on the street, and despite the review of the local environment plan this year, there is no change to the development standard for height or FSR to the area. I believe this will lead to a creep of controls of height of the proposed development needs to come down to at least 4 stories. As Kim's noted, the cost is around $4 million. The cost of works has been estimated $4 million. That equates to about $5,000 per square metre and is largely inconsistent and underestimated compared to the context of building costs in Sydney at the moment. There's been mention of a quantity surveyor's report. However, that hasn't been available on the council website, and I'd like to see visibility to this. There's also no mention of how this is being reviewed. Is there a peer review process in place? I'd like visibility to the QS report and understanding, because my understanding is that the implications of inaccuracy around the cost of works has implications for how this is reviewed. So whether it goes to local panel or to a regional panel, and it also has a massive impact on how much development contribution is paid. I'm also concerned about the excavation. I don't believe there's been enough information provided. I think that there is no precedent for a 13 metre plus 10 metre car stacker excavation in the area, and I would ask that we provided more information about the reassurance around this. I don't think that the associated risks have been mitigated. And if everybody was to do this on the street where nobody has that kind of excavation, what would that do for the foundations of the area? In my naivety as a layperson, I don't understand the $350,000 payment for local contributions and the impact that has on the planning process. And I would like some more transparency around this, because it's confusing to me as someone that is not as familiar with these processes as you council are. Despite my attempts to address some of these concerns and questions with the assigned town planner, I've been disappointed that I've had no opportunity to have a conversation with them about my concerns that I'm raising today. In summary, I would urge that the development is reconsidered as a genuine 4-story development, not 5 stories plus add-ons, and to be consistent with the streetscape, to be more respectful of height limits, and to alleviate some pressures of setting a precedent in the area. I would ask for a copy of the QS report in terms of the cost of works, and I would also like to see more information provided around the impact of excavation and the $350,000 payment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Park. Are there any questions from the members of the panel?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Then the next speaker is Sophie Baldwin.
Hi.
Hello. Oh, whoops.
Sorry.
Here and then there you are again. And you're from number 12 Silver Street.
So my name's Sophie Baldwin. I'm the resident of number 12 Silver Street, Tamarama. I stated my objections in the DA and reiterate the main points today and feel that the council have not addressed my objections accordingly. My objections are summarised as follows. Number 1, controls and reuse of the existing envelope. Planning controls are put in place to stop the historical overdevelopment and to avoid the scenario we are facing with overdevelopment of this beachside location. It is clearly a new building. It's not a rebuild, and they should have to adhere more strongly to the planning controls that have been put in place to everybody in this constituency. The developer seems to think that they have the right and state economic viability for going 2 stories above the building controls. As residents, I feel we're coming late to the party, being unable to speak to council about this and given 3 minutes to sound like I'm calling the Melbourne Cup right now. The developer is working on the presumption they can build within the existing envelope of a 70s building that is hideous and oversized. The building in the new phase is proposed to be 5.7 metres over the height restrictions, equivalent to 2 stories. The height changes the fundamental character of the area. The scale and proportion are wrong. There are no other building on Pacific Avenue or the coastal walk that are above 3 or 4 stories. It's an iconic beachside photographable location, and it's going to end up looking like Miami if this sets a precedence for the boardwalk. My recommendation is that the council limit this to a 4-story building, which still provides the developer with the extra story for their economic viability and is still over, a good percentage over the height restrictions, but a fair compromise. My second point is it sets a precedence. The current design makes a mockery of the height controls. A concern that future developments can use this as a precedence will have a flow-on effect of large oversized buildings along the coastlines. I'd like to draw attention to number 6 Pacific Avenue. If they adhere to the controls of 9.5 metres, their next door neighbour's building is 5 metres, 2 stories higher than them. A 4-story building would be much more sympathetic and go along the natural contours of the land. Third point is monetary concerns. The building costs are incorrect and inconsistent with the development of this size. I'm not an expert and know that a new apartment, a new house built in this area is well over $4 million. The price needs to be increased to reflect the scale and magnitude of development and shared with the community. The developers are professionals. They know how to get extra stories and improve their profitability. They've paid a $350,000 voluntary planning agreement for a $4 million development in the vicinity of 10% to the council. We are not being provided with a community consultation that is required for something that is going to be along our iconic coastline. Can we please get assurance from the council of why this was agreed to in the beginning and how we can get this to get an outcome for the community? The developers had pre-meetings and consultation with the council, been given the sort of go ahead to go within the existing building framework, and we feel that we're coming to the party quite late. So in conclusion, I would like to urge the council to consider these matters very strongly and to go back to the applicant. The building is beautiful. It's an absolutely lovely architectural piece of work. It needs to be 4 stories. And think about the coastline and the long-term effects. It's something we have to look at for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of Ms. Baldwin from the panel?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I do come to Mr. Mark Shapiro now. Mr. Shapiro? He was there.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
You're Mark Shapiro,
Thank you.
the architect for the applicant.
I am, thank you. I might defer briefly to the applicant, Mr. Vaughan Blank, who wanted to provide an introduction, and then I'll speak after that, if that is okay.
Mr. Vaughan Blank?
Yes, Chair. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Perfect. Just to advise the panel that we have had extensive meetings with council in order to see what we can do with this building. As council is aware, this building is coming to the end of its useful life. It's riddled with concrete cancer. The clear directive from council was that we were not to exceed the building envelope by 1 millimeter, which we have achieved. In actual fact, We have improved the views from Silver Street, the area behind. As a result of not exceeding the envelope, we are not having any further impact on any of the neighboring areas. We believe that it's a great architectural outcome. Just to allay some of the fears, we have had extensive geotech reports done from JK Corp, which are all contained in the submissions. My last point, and Mark can address this in greater detail, all the applicants refer to a roof terrace. That is incorrect. It's not a roof terrace. It's just a balcony on the top level. There is no roof terrace on this. There is no additional precedent set because Waverley Council's precedent is that buildings should be allowed to be replaced within its existing envelope, and that has been approved by Waverley Council numerous times before. We think that Mark has done a tremendous job. We don't believe that, well, not that we don't believe, there is no additional impact on the neighbours at all. There is only an enhancement with this development, and it will certainly improve the area, replacing a concrete riddled building. I'll now defer to Mark, who can address some of these points in greater detail.
Thank you, Mr. Blake.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Shapiro.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, panel. We also wish to thank Council, in particular the planners, Kylie Lucas, Angela Rossi, and Bridget McNamara, who we worked very closely with throughout the pre-DA process and now through the DA assessment process. We, of course, support the recommendation of Council and have no issue with the majority of the proposed deferred commencement conditions. I will address one of them shortly. Just in relation to what Mr. Blank discussed and some of the objectives, just to address some of the points, as Mr. Blank mentioned, the existing building has reached the end of its usable life, and it also fails modern amenity standards and in terms of ceiling heights and usability. As mentioned, the only viable way to place a modern and more attractive and amenable building in its place is to not comply with the FSR and height standards and to provide a building of a similar size, or else it just can't be done. So we worked very closely with Council along those guidelines to retain completely within the existing envelope, and as Vaughan mentioned, to improve it, improve views, improve privacy. We don't have any side-facing balconies anymore. We've reduced the large pitched roofs, so now it's a flat roof and a lower building than the current one in its place. It does retain the existing context, so won't set any precedents. And as a well-known planning principle, Council assesses based on context and does not set any precedents, and each development is assessed on its own merits. So with regard to the deferred commencement conditions, we made a request under a late submission from the town planner, Mr. Lee Cosnetta, in relation to condition 3, which seeks to reduce the balcony terrace on level 5 to 15 square meters. And we believe that's not in the best interest of the area or the development, and it's unnecessary for a number of reasons. The first being that the terrace on level 5 satisfies all ADG controls relating to privacy and private open space. There is no applicable DCP control for terraces as it relates to flat buildings in Waverley Council. There is a reference to 15 square meters in relation to dwelling houses, and on rooftops, this is neither. This is the private terrace for Unit 5. The reduction to 15 square meters will unduly reduce and impact the amenity of that unit. The design response is essentially, as discussed, we're staying within this existing building envelope, which results in this stepped form following the existing building, and that results in the shape the upper level living areas being greatly set back from the edge of the level below. So to reduce it to 15 square meters, which I'm not sure if the panel has the diagrams that were sent through in the late submission, but I think it's quite visible in those what that would look like and how far set back that terrace would be. So it would not only be the smallest private open space in the entire development, whereas previously it was sort of the main feature of that unit, but it would unduly detach that unit from the views of the beach and the water, and we would just see the cliff on the opposite side and the houses on the opposite side from that unit by detaching it from those views. And that was really the entire sort of attractive feature of that unit.
Okay.
So
but I ask you to finish up, Mr. Shapiro.
Oh, okay, sure. So the other aspects was we don't believe there's any additional benefit to the neighbours in reducing the terrace. It's well elevated above the adjoining buildings and just looks onto their roofs, and there won't be any additional privacy impacts. It's set back from the edges. There's planters on the side, so it really is a much more polite version of the predominant context, which as the submission says, it's consistent with the context of the coastal fringe all around, which does consist of these large terraces from the roofs below, which are in handshake of each other. So I don't know if you also saw the diagrams sent through Kenneth Street, Fletcher Street, and Pacific Avenue, which really demonstrates that this is well consistent with that within its context and an established principle along the coastal fringe, where views
Shapiro,
take
I
precedent.
asked you to finish up quite some time ago, and you just burbled on
Sure.
about the same issue. So please
Apologies.
finish up. You're over time.
Okay, no, that's all I wanted to say. But in general, we're supportive of the recommendation, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Shapiro from the panel?
Yeah, I've got one. Just in relation to the excavation, can you just confirm the quantity of excavation?
I can confirm briefly. Now that it was mentioned, I don't believe it's 2,200 cubic meters. I think it's closer to the vicinity of 1,500 based on our plans, but I don't have the exact figure at the moment.
Okay. And then just understanding where the excavations to occur. If I look at DA 2300 revision B, there's a dotted line that says existing ground level. So is that an accurate representation of the unexcavated area of the site?
Yes, it is. That's based on the surveyed level of the existing building on the lower ground floor.
And then you're putting
your
car stacker at an area in the site that would involve the most excavation. So I just wanted to understand the logic behind that, as opposed to putting it closer to Pacific Avenue and thereby requiring less excavation.
Sure. The logic was, if we placed it closer to Pacific Avenue, given that these are independent stackers and they require a certain amount of headroom, it would have effectively result in either knocking out the entire unit above it, or it would result in raising everything and a similar outcome to what's currently on the site, which is a sort of large, almost two-story wall of garaging. So in order to sufficiently submerge that basement, that was the most appropriate location.
So I don't understand. Presumably, if you look at this car stacker at the back of the site, if you put that towards the front of it, you presumably just go down further with your excavation, or you're saying you have to have a certain amount that goes up into where Unit 1 would be. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. It has a headroom requirement. And in order to make that work, we would we would have to, well, we've reached the limit of the ramp, so you'd have to ramp much further into the site, and it just wouldn't work. So
even if you put it next to the lift, if you had your ramp going down on your basement level at an RL that's lower, so that you have greater headroom, it wouldn't work there?
It would mean that effectively you're lengthening the ramp to the point that it would make the other parking spaces not workable, or then you'd end up with a lot of wasted space just for ramp and no usable basement, I think. So we did look at a number of options, and it was really the most efficient way. It's just a challenging site and a challenging geometry.
Remember too, if you have a look at the plans, and Mark can give it to you in greater detail, we are and I just can't see the detail on my screen over here. We've got a solid block mass of stone, which is at 8 meters, Mark? I can't really read it, unfortunately. What is from the car stacker to the boundary wall, the rear boundary wall from Silverstein?
Right. So it's about just over 9 meters, almost 10 meters.
Yeah. So the logic with the geotech is that you've got roughly, whatever it is, 9-10 meters of a solid block wall that will provide ample security for the surrounding neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Shapiro.
Thank you.
So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we will consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. So that brings us to 78 Military Road, Dover Heights, a modification application. And I think, Mr. Shapiro, you're the speaker as architect for the applicant in this one too.
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'll definitely stay within the time in this one. So we thank, once again, we thank the panel, and we thank council and the assessing officers for the excellent job that they've done. We fully support the recommendation of the report. We have one minor request to the proposed conditions of consent, in that condition 3 of general modifications refers to public domain improvements that are required to be approved, submitted to council and approved prior to the issue of the relevant construction certificate. And one of those items is the vehicular crossing, which is also addressed in condition 37 later in the proposed conditions of consent, and indeed the current conditions of consent. That, I think that condition 37 is the new condition, and a lot more extensive in terms of its requirements, and we support that condition and have no issue with it. We only request that given the development has the building has already commenced under an early works CC under the DA approval, requiring the process of submitting the proposed vehicle crossing that satisfies the condition and undertaking that that approval process will effectively mean that works on site will have to come to a halt. So we request that requirement, or the words vehicular crossing, is removed from condition 3, given that's already addressed in condition 37 and can undertake its own separate assessment process.
Okay.
Yeah. But
okay, anything else?
No, nothing else.
From the panel, Mr. Shapiro?
No.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Shapiro.
Thank you.
We'll take into account what you've said, and at the end of the public meeting, we will consider this application and notify our decision on the council website. So that brings us to 99 Military Road. We're moving along Military Road. And one speaker is Sasha Reid. Is she present, please? Sasha Reid.
Hi, sorry, I can't get my video to work today, but I'm here. Hi, Chair, thank you very much.
And you're from next door, number 90?
I'm from 97, sorry, yes.
Yeah. Yes, please go ahead.
I'm from 97 Military Road. I just wanted to note a few points. Thank you very much to the panel for their time at looking at this. Obviously, one of the biggest concerns is the loss of sunlight with next door exceeding the FSR. So that's been looked at in the recommendation. And yeah, obviously we'd be losing a lot. We have 3 very young children who use that garden quite a bit. And that loss of sun, I think it was specifically, they said between the hours of 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. would impact us greatly. So yeah, I guess I don't need to go further into that because that's been looked at in the report. The other concern for us is changing those windows on the second elevation. And we would rather have them as highlighted or frosted because one day with our family expanding, we may want to go up as well. And them looking into our garden or looking into our home is, yeah, it's just a loss of privacy. And I think you guys have already looked at the dilapidation report, which would be a standard. The only thing, just to keep it brief, is just to mention what one of my neighbours has asked for, and he has said that his concern is that they should keep it the same height as the adjacent development and the rear balcony, and that there should be no lift shaft over the roof line because it takes away light and obviously impacts, and it doesn't add to the general aesthetic of the street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reid. Any questions of Ms. Reid from the panel? Thank you very much. The next speaker then is it Justin Long, architect? Mr. Long present? Can I ask Rosalina if Mr. Long is in the waiting room or is not?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Sorry about that. Okay. Can I speak?
Yes, please. You're Justin Long?
That's right. I'm the
architect for the applicant.
That's right.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So the main issues here are FSR and overshadowing. We request the council do approve the application. Based on the grounds that the building complies in its entirety with the building height, front and rear setbacks, side setback. With regard to the overshadowing, I believe you have the shadow diagrams there on pages 233 to 239 of the report. You can see the overshadowing is very little, and in fact, it complies completely with the DCP requirements due to the orientation of number 97. The rear faces east and retains full sun all morning. The front faces west and retains full sun all afternoon. There is one room, one habitable room on the side, which is called a bedroom 3 or study. I think they circulated a floor plan of number 97 with you, in which you can see they're all non-habitable rooms along the side. And that bedroom 3 is in a vulnerable position. The full private open space, there's a fraction of overshadowing at 3 p.m. up in the back corner of the yard. If you were standing in that hatched area, you would have sunlight on your face. The living room and kitchen have full sun, nothing changes with that. And the front 2 rooms have full sun in the afternoon. The proposal is also similar in scale and has to the prevalent FSR in the locality. Number 105 and 113 Military Road are both dual occupancies, or sorry, semi-detached houses of exactly the same scale and FSR, recently approved and built. So we're not setting any new precedent. And I would comment that any conventional upper level addition to the subject site would impose exactly the same overshadowing, if not worse. It could be done as a complying development certificate. They could go to 8.5 metres higher. Our proposal is 6.5 metres higher at the rear. So I'm not sure if you can have a look at the shadow diagrams on those pages. They completely comply with the DCP requirements, and there's very little of it. And the elevational shadow diagrams, I guess they look worse than what they are, being the middle of winter. And like I said, I mean, they're all non-habitable rooms apart from one room, which is in a compromised position that any addition on this site would overshadow. So we were quite surprised to hear that it's not recommended for approval, to be honest. We worked through it with Penny Wong, the planner. Everything complies. There's precedents all along the street. So we're surprised to hear that, and we request that the planning panel and council consider it for approval as an appropriate development for the site with minimal environmental impact.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Are there any questions of Mr. Long from the panel, please?
Mr. Long, just in terms of when you look at the elevations, you said the solar elevations.
Sure.
Can you just explain which is the room that you're saying is the habitable room?
If you're looking at our shadow diagrams, the elevational ones.
I'm just looking at A21, drawing A21, is that?
Yeah, so from the left, there it's noted on those squares, which are the windows. There's a laundry, then the study, and a bathroom, ensuite. So that one study is the second window along. It's the only affected habitable room. The controls refer to primary living room.
Sorry, can I interrupt?
Sure.
That's my daughter's room, not just a study. So it's actually a completely habitable bedroom with a child who lives in there and plays there.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thanks.
And in terms of the part of your building that is causing that shadow, that would be something in the middle of your building, would it?
It is. It's going to be difficult to avoid that. I mean, all development will cause some overshadowing, and like I said, a complying development on this site would do a lot worse.
And then in terms of the area of the back garden that you were mentioning, is that A20, say, looking at that?
That's right.
It's shaded area, and the part of your building that's causing that is from the rear, is it?
It is from the rear. I think, to be honest, though, on the number 97, that single-storey brick building is their home office. I don't think we've actually shown what existing shadow that casts. And if you were standing in that hatched area, you'd have sunlight on your face, and that's at 3 p.m. in the middle of winter. If you look at
the rear of your development that is causing that overshadowing in terms of the height is complying, but it would only be a floor space ratio issue there potentially.
That's right. It's 6.5 metres high. It's not anywhere near the 8.5 allowable height.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any further questions of Mr. Long? Thank you, Mr. Long.
I could just comment on the owner of number 97's comments. There will be no lift shaft overrun. Domestic lifts don't need that.
Okay.
The rear terrace could be screened at the side. And there's 4 or 5 windows along the side. 2 of them are bathrooms, which will be frosted, and there's 2 bedrooms at the rear. If they had to be screened to eye height, we could do that.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Thank you.
Conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. When we move further along Military Road, I think to 250 Military Road, and the only speaker I have is Warwick Harding. Is that Warwick Harding?
It is, yes.
And you're the architect for the applicant?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, look, we've read through the council's recommendations. We agree with the consent conditions and the recommendation for approval. I thank the council assessors involved, and I'm here to answer any questions that they may have.
Thank you for coming along and putting up your hand for any questions. Does the panel have any questions of Mr. Harding, the architect for the applicant?
No.
No.
I don't. So thank you very much indeed. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. So that brings us to, is it units 1 and 2, 16 Concept Street? And I think the only speaker I have is Chris Thorpe, architect.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good. And you're the architect for the applicant, Mr. Thorpe.
Yes, I'm the architect for the applicant, and in a similar manner to the previous item, we'd like to thank the panel and chair, and are happy to fully support the recommendation of council and the included conditions, and basically here to answer any questions if there's any questions from the panel.
Well, thank you for coming forward. Are there any questions from members of the panel for Mr. Thorpe?
No.
I think the answer is no, but thank you for your attendance.
No, thank you.
So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we will consider this application and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. That brings us to the next item, which is 25 to 27 Kalewis Street, Bondi Beach. And the only speaker that I have is Matthew Fortunato on behalf of the applicant.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see you too. You're the town planner on behalf of the applicant.
Yes, I'm the town planner on behalf of the applicant. I wrote the statement of environmental effects and the clause 4.6 variation request. I've had a look through council's assessment report and generally agree with the conclusions made and the recommendation for approval. I can see that no objections have been made. So I'm here more just to answer any questions that the panel may have.
Thank you, Mr. Fortunato. Are there any questions of this gentleman from the members of the panel?
No.
Well, thank you, Mr. Fortunato, for coming along.
No.
So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we'll consider this application and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. So that brings us to 53 to 57 Beaumont Avenue, Rose Bay. And speaker that I have is Ashley Chung, the applicant, or for the applicant. Is that person? Hello, is that Ashley Chung? Rosalina, can you help me? Is Ashley Chung present?
Yes, they're in the meeting. We just can't hear them, but they're not on mute either.
Hello, you're muted. You're muted.
Pretty straightforward DA
That's better,
for the
that's
subdivision.
better. Okay.
We got some feedback in terms of the future sale of the site as to the lots being irregular in shape. So what we've sought is 2 regular shaped lots, which are well above the minimum requirements. As during the DA process, we did submit quite late, and apologies for that, was to seek an amendment to the originally proposed lot sizes. And that's basically because the site narrows to the rear, especially for the proposed lot, the proposed western lot.
So do we
in terms of any future development on the site, they'll form part of any future application to council. What we're seeking at the moment is purely just for the subdivision of the site.
So do we have that new plan proposal before us? Do we have the new plan with the, you said that there was a change to the subdivision plan?
Yes, I believe there was an addendum prepared by the assessing officer.
Right.
I've got the lot sizes in front of me if you...
Okay. And they're still over the minimum?
Yeah, so original proposed was 770 and 880.
Yeah.
The amended is 747 and 905.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we'll have a look at that addendum.
Sure.
Any questions of Mr. John from the members of the panel?
No.
Well, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
attendance. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, which will be fairly soon, we will adjourn and consider this and the other applications before us, and notify our decision on the council website as soon as possible. Well, that brings us to the end of the public meeting. So at 1:25 I'll close the public meeting with thanks to